Please rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming this evening. Go ahead and call the roll.
Trustee Spurling. Here. Trustee Lee.
Here.
Trustee Heinz. Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
And Trustee Bond.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum this evening. I'll move on to public participation. The first one is public comment. This is the 2-minute opportunity that any member of the public has to address the board. If you're on the agenda later, you can speak at that time. But if you're here to address the board on any topic, you can do so at this time.
Good evening. My name is Chris Vertine. I'm a resident of Montgomery, live in Blackberry Crossing. I'm here tonight to possibly solicit some support for maintaining some of the ponds in the Blackberry Crossing area. The HOA dissolved years ago, and the ponds were given to the village to maintain. The scenario we have now is there's just people from out of the village. They're not residents. They're depleting the fish population, and it's aggravating. There's about 10 or 12 of us that try to help patrol it, but there's just no regard for limit or size of fish. People are just coming and taking them and throwing in buckets. We engaged the police department a couple times, but it's really not their job to enforce like fishing regulations. So I guess the solution we'd like to see is just some signage, some help with some signage, maybe catch and release. We actually have the funding ourselves to pay for the signage. So I got together about 10 of us to put together some cash, and we're just looking for some help in that section. So I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Awesome. All right.
I've got a couple of questions for our attorney then. If I'm a resident and I go to one of the detention basins and I'm fishing, do I need a fishing license for that?
Probably, yes. I'm not real familiar with IDNR's regs on that, but I would assume so, yes.
Are your officers capable isn't a good word because I know they're more than capable. What's that? Empowered. Good word. Thank you, Stan. To enforce that and to handle those sorts of issues?
To answer that question, we did receive direction from Attorney Julian to discuss that with the IDNR. So we're in the process of doing that at this moment.
Okay. The other thing, I know that we've talked about this before, and Stan has been very vocal. The homeowners that are around these detention ponds aren't the only people who are paying for the maintenance of these detention ponds. So all residents need to be able to access these, but do people outside the village who aren't residents, do they really need to be at these detention basins, at these ponds and stuff?
It depends on the pond. If memory serves, these are owned by the Village of Montgomery at this point. Is that correct? I'm getting some
Most of them.
head nods, most of them. So they're public parks, if you will, or public property. We can certainly ban all people, including village residents, from accessing them if they want, but I don't think that you have the ability to say only village residents. So no, I don't think that you could do that. The other thing I would question is, I suspect that the residents of the area in question, if they're paying through an SSA, they may be the only ones who are supporting that particular pond. That is a possibility.
I think that's accurate, though. There was an SSA put out after you took ownership, and we were reassessed to what, $50. I can't remember what it was annually.
Right.
So.
So I don't know that that answers all your questions, but I just want to make sure that
Okay.
I got what I could.
I would just make a comment. Thank you for taking ownership of those basins and enjoying them to the benefit of the community.
We clean them up, too.
I bet you do, and that means a lot.
I appreciate you hearing me out today, and I guess we'll follow up.
Yeah, and one comment I was going to make on the broader picture of the signs, I don't know if we can do the signage. I'm thinking that if it's a suggestion, like catch and release or whatever it is. But I'll have Director of Public Works, kind of contact you on that. Does that make
Yeah, the DNR will give you signs with, I think they had them at the dam until they got stolen or whatever. It has a picture of like a bass.
Right.
And it gives you the length, and it gives you all that type of stuff, the limit. Your Illinois fishing license, I went and fished with my son, or my grandson, is 65 cents. But it costs you $7 to get it at Walmart. So it didn't make sense to me, but, when you've got your grandson there, you go by. But I thought, why? It's so cheap, it's unbelievable. And yet, signs like that, DNR should have some signs that we can put up to help you there. And we always fish and release. I mean, but I've seen guys with buckets over there, you're right. But they don't know if one fish from another, some of those guys. So that's what's even worse. I mean, it's not a...
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Any other comments from the public?
Well, last time I stood up here, I'm the owner of the Merlin on Route 30, and there's some questions on how we were possibly different than Christian Brothers, and you should have a piece of paper in front of you. There was a clip. I wanted just a clip so you could undo instead of ripping the staple apart. If you look at the two, there's really no difference. We do the same exact thing. We're both full-service auto repair shops. And, like I said, I'm not against competition, but I just don't want it, right next to me. And originally, there was that vestibule, a plot of land that I'm on, there was one special permit given. And now, obviously, this vote is to allow another special permit. So I'd hope you'd all vote no on that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Ray Munoz. I'm with Merlin. I'm the general manager of the company. We're a Chicago-based company. We have approximately 35 stores in Chicago and one in Wisconsin and one in Georgia as well. We have one in downstate East Peoria. We've been in business, this will be our 43rd year starting this year, but we're based out of St. Charles, Illinois. We've kind of kept our home in this area. We give back to the community. We support Children's Home and Aid, which is based out of Chicago, and they are the largest, I guess, organization for child welfare in the state of Illinois. I'd like to echo Steve's comments on that. Years ago, and for I think over 25 to 30 years, we were at the location on Douglas Road, and we've moved. We moved a few years ago, and that's the new location we have. And to Steve's point, we moved out there to follow, the customer's needs. We obviously want to service the customer best. A lot of our customers from the old Douglas Road location still came with us on the new location. Steve's done very well there. I guess my point to the whole issue is, having, to echo Steve's comments, having two back-to-back full-service automotive repair facilities, I'm not sure if that's the best move. I do know Back in the old days, you wouldn't have a Jewel and a Dominic's across the street from each other. So I'm not sure how this will serve the public in any way whatsoever. What you're going to do is have a aspiring, independent business owner. Steve's a resident of Montgomery as well. He'll be having to battle with, a large corporation. I see a gentleman here. You guys run a good company, and nothing personal. It's just the location of it. There's a lot of property available nearby or around the corner, et cetera. Now, I have nothing bad to say about Christian Brothers when I say that. It's just the close proximity. It being back-to-back, again, serves no business purpose. So thank you for your time. I hope you vote no. By the way, I'm a Plainfield resident too, so I'm close.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any other comments for the board? Go ahead, come on down.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Decker. I am also a resident of Montgomery, right across from the police department there in Lakewood Creek. What I want to talk to you guys about tonight was beekeeping in our city. I don't know if it's been brought to the village before for consideration, but it's as not only the environmental issues that we've been facing with the decline of bees, almost, well, depending on the projections, but at least 40% of a decrease in the last few decades. And, well, when I was reading our city's ordinance, it was sort of vague, but city officials were telling me that we're not allowed to have bees because it falls under livestock. But I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention that we're seeing a movement nowadays that major cities like New York, Chicago, Seattle, Boston, Denver, they are all allowing residents anywhere in their city to keep bees. So we're seeing them in small backyards, rooftops. There's a lot of hesitation that I've heard with cities not wanting to have bees because they're aggressive or dangerous, and I think there's doing a bit of research. There's a lot of confusion with wasps and yellow jackets and actually aggressive bees versus the little honeybees that we love that make us honey and beeswax. And for anybody who likes to do things themselves at their house, it's just another project that I'm looking to sort of expand, even though I am in a very residential area.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I think many of us on this board share a good friend that's very involved in that effort in nearby communities. And so I think this is the first time that we've actually been approached about something like this. And I know that it's currently not allowed by village ordinance, but it's not something that we've discussed before. So we'd turn it over to the board to see if it's something we want to look at or not.
What street do you live on?
I live on Francis.
Anything to get him here.
Literally right across from the police department.
It's something I'd be willing to discuss.
I think it's worthy of further conversation.
Maybe we could parse the meaning of the word livestock. I could see butterflies and earthworms and some other animals that would have environmentally benefit to them that we maybe should allow.
All right.
Just a quick question for you. Obviously, you've done some research on this. What's the average number of hives that people are keeping on their own personal property?
So I've seen, just looking at the numbers for
Just a ballpark.
Yeah, 3 to 5 is about what's normal. There was actually Naperville has been having issues with people keeping too many hives on any kind of land, so they're looking to restrict it back to that same ballpark of 3 to 5. But with, go ahead.
Oh, no, when you're done.
Oh, okay. Yeah, with just the nature of keeping bees, and obviously we're in an area that gets pretty cold, the hives have a much better chance of producing and maintaining if there's hives right next to them that, 2, maybe 3 that can help each other to make it through the winter.
Okay, thank you.
Now, is this for personal use, or are you talking about a business?
No, I'm strictly personal use. The only honey I'd not use for personal use would be given to my neighbors, so they continue to let me keep bees. But yeah, another thing that I've seen in my research is that for towns similar to our size, that you can get some very specific municipal code to kind of to make sure that it's done as safely as possible, and that it really doesn't affect anybody outside of.
He's right about the bees. The honeybees are very docile, I guess, for lack of a better term. Hornets and wasps are pretty aggressive. In college, I'm a horticulture major in college, so I took entomology classes, and we had to do an insect collection. So we had like 15 hives on campus. So we'd run through with a net, and we'd grab the bees, and we'd put them in the thing and kill them. Then we'd sell them on the, I guess, bee black market for people who didn't want to run through the hives to get them. So they're pretty docile.
Okay, then.
And now you know.
Yeah.
I never got stung.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I think what we'll do is add this to a future meeting to discuss, just to look into this. I'm sure that some folks will probably attend that meeting in support and also concerned. But I think that it's it's a discussion worth having. So I appreciate you bringing it to us.
And I appreciate you guys considering.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
I bet no one here knew that there was a bee black market. So
I was pretty sure if there was, Steve knew about it.
It's all the buzz.
All right, don't want to cut anybody else off, but I'm assuming that's it. Any other topics to come before the board? All right, with that, we'll move on to the greatest proclamation of all time, National Engineers Week. I will read and entertain a motion for approval.
Nobody moved.
nobody moved.
It's not a PowerPoint, is it?
This isn't going to go well. Whereas engineers have used their scientific and technical knowledge and skills in creative and innovative ways to improve society's quality of life. And whereas engineers face the majority of technological challenges of our time, from rebuilding towns devastated by national disasters, cleaning up the environment, and assuring safe, clean, and efficient sources of energy, to designating information systems that will speed our country into the future. And whereas engineers are encouraging our young math and science students to realize the practical power of their knowledge, and whereas we look more than ever to engineers and their knowledge and skills to meet the challenges of the 21st century. Now, therefore, I, Matt Brawley, as Village President of Montgomery, on behalf of its citizens and village officials, do hereby proclaim the week of February 18th through the 24th, 2018, to be National Engineers Week in all of Montgomery, Illinois.
Did somebody say someone?
Motion to approve.
No. Yes.
I'll second.
Second? All right, call the roll, please.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Swirling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Almost didn't get that one.
Those
All right,
of
thank
that
you.
are
I
unaware-
do appreciate it.
For those of you that are unaware, Mayor Brawley is an engineer by trade. So we're just having a little fun with him. We respect you, Engineer Wallers.
But not Brawley? Is that what
Yes.
you're saying? Nice.
So far, it's going pretty good tonight.
Okay,
Thank
that
you all
came
for
from
coming.
Doug, not Teresa.
All right, so with that, we'll move on to the MEDC update. I'll invite Dr. Neil Schlupp and Shar up to the podium, or whoever's going first. And I appreciate you guys coming every so often to keep us up to date on what's cracking. So, go ahead.
31 years of private practice starts to do with your eyes, so you have to put your cheaters on. My name is Dr. Neil Schlupp. I am the chairman for Economic Development Corporation, and we are pleased to be here with you this evening. As we probably are aware, we were chartered back in 2003, and this is our 15th year as an organization. Charlene Fiore has been the executive director for us now for the last 9 years, and I have now been the chairman for the 8th year, will be the chairman for the upcoming 18 year as well. Been a challenging year in some ways, as I'm sure everybody is aware. We've lost some of our bigger members, Caterpillar and Butterball. We do have some new members that have also joined our board, Old Dominion and Performance Food Service Chicago, and they are now sitting on the board, and we're very happy to have them there. We have our budget approved for the year, and we hopefully are going to be able to move along. We have things we want to get accomplished this year. We've tried to budget ourselves to make sure we can meet all the demands and challenges that we're going to have going forward. Tonight, we'd like to just talk a little bit about the year in review and also some of the stuff that is going to be going forward for the upcoming year. And so I've asked Charlene to put a short presentation together. I know we have a busy night tonight with a lot of stuff on this agenda, so we'll try to get through it as fast as we can. And again, ask any questions afterwards. We'll be glad to answer those for you. Thank you.
I still might need my water, so. I know how everybody likes PowerPoint, so I did put some slides together. But the presentation should be less than 15 minutes. I realize you do have a big audience. Actually, I thank everybody for being here. I don't think I've ever had this big of an audience, so thanks for being here. My name is Charlene Coulam Fiore, and I've been running the MEDC for about 8.5 years. We're in our 9th year with me, is what Dr. Neal meant to say. So I'm here to just give you an update. Our last update was the towards the end of the year. It was closer to August in 2017, and get you up to date on some of the things, if this works. See, the battery had fallen out. I thought.
If you just say beep, Jeff will change it.
This is not working.
Good. On the next slide.
Can you help me? I'm so sorry. Okay. This is a cycle, and I always keep this slide in. Sometimes I add some years. The importance of this is the never-ending cycle between the activity with the village, with the MEDC, with businesses, retention, community development, even occasionally finance and public works, the Plan Commission, and also the services within the village. We all need each other, we all work together, and I appreciate everyone that works with us and for us, because we're all a team. The next slide, and I talked about this last year, and I know that it probably still holds true. There are people who will look at the glass as half empty, half full. I think that a lot has to do with your attitude and what you're looking at. When I tell a new business that we're losing jobs in the area, they're pretty excited because they want that labor, where someone else, maybe your neighbor, might not feel the same way. So again, depending on what you're looking at, there's good and bad in losing business as well as gaining new businesses. So we move on to the next slide, which is part of the half-empty glass, which Butterball was part of, because it was around August, the end of August, that we lost about 660 jobs. The good news, of course, is that facility is going to be replaced with a new facility and, well, a new business, a new family-owned business, which is the Buddick family. The next slide, I don't know why I'm holding this, Jeff, I'm sorry. This is just a little bit about the company, and I think it's really important because it's a family-run business. They're in their 4th generation. If we go to the next slide, not only is the name Buddick familiar to you, but some of the other labels that they carry might also be important to you, because those are other companies that they have as well. They currently are going in a 280,000 square foot building, and they're going to start using about 100,000 square feet. So the good news is we have another 180,000 square feet to work with. So that again, to me, is room to grow. Another exciting thing is the Buddick family and that company is 75 years old. That says a lot. And it was interesting. I know I wrote this in the newsletter, but Mr. Buddick was happy when he came to Montgomery because he had done business in the past with several of our homegrown businesses such as Gusto Packing and Fox River, which is now Performance Foods. So again, is the glass half empty? Only half of the Butterball jobs are actually being replaced by Buddick. And I think some people are still digesting the Caterpillar announcement. So again, moving forward, as if that was not enough to digest, there's VVF. Now here's the good news. We have become so much more proactive than we ever have been. VVF actually reached out to us within hours of the actual decision of them closing down the bar of Soap Line. They also have about room for about 100 trailers in their new yard that was done in '09, which means that we could probably share that rail yard with other companies. So exciting enough, BNSF called me right away and said, could I set up a meeting with them? And also another exciting thing was the people at VVF, most of them are very local. And I had sent them a state of Illinois, it was like it was kind of like what one would call a lead, I guess. I don't know exactly what they call them, but it was a project called Project Neptune. And after reviewing the requirements, the building and the site and the rail yard fit all the criteria. And that's the good news, because we could also find other uses for that yard and still keep 50 to 60 employees there. I think I just need some water. I'm sorry. Now, again, when I talk about attitude, when you look at Gusto, which was at one time a family-owned business, in 2009, there was only about 190 jobs there. And it was the Butterball project that ended up coming in and then growing to excess of 660 employees, which they actually averaged about a 10 to 15% increase in employment as well as Performance Foods. Now, the exciting news is when we talk to Carl Buddick, his rate of increase is more like 30 to 40%. So again, that's more good news, I feel, plus their other facilities, they have a couple thousand employees. So what can we do? What do we do? What are some of the things that have changed over the last few years? Workforce development continues to be very important to anyone looking in the area. Having companies closed or relocated then opens that workforce door. EDA and Intersect Illinois have been fairly helpful, and those are new venues that we have never worked with before. Intersect Illinois is fairly new to this area, and they were the first ones that were really excited to see the VVF building because they felt that that's the actual only building in Illinois that could fit the criteria of that Neptune project. And then, of course, the railroad. Eric Pitcher from the railroad has been very happy. He's asked me to set up several meetings, including one with John Hinchy, who owns the other property along Alcott Road. We still have continued interest and hits on the MEDC website. LinkedIn has been very popular. I had a lot of old brokers reach out to me And I keep telling them every time they do an announcement to come bring that building to Montgomery, which has been kind of exciting because it'll follow up with some of the tours that I've recently done and plan to do into the next year. Also, social media is inexpensive, and a lot of the right people are there. Not all right people, but most of the people. So again, we will continue to showcase Montgomery. I usually do the tour with the Community Development Department around June. We'll continue to do private tours, which we've done a few. Actually, recently we've even done one with a village trustee, which can be helpful when you're looking at roads and properties and such. We'll continue the golf outing. The golf outing is our only fundraiser, and it's really all about the people and getting people to get to know one another, hopefully do business with one another, and also participate in everything that we have going on that day. We had a lot of great drawings. We had a lot of shop local events. Actually, last year was awesome. Many of the trustees participated and helped and got to meet so many of the company owners, and we really appreciate that. It really says a lot. You send a message to everyone that the village and the MEDC are partners, and I think that says a lot, and it's important to everyone there. They feel like they know you, and that's a good thing. So again, communication.
And we sell a lot of raffle tickets.
What did you say?
And we sell a lot of raffle tickets.
And you sell a lot of raffle tickets. Now, we hope to continue, and we will continue the ICSC event. I'm sorry, we won't be going to Vegas. We probably don't have the funds for that. As Doc mentioned, in last year, we were short $10,000 from the two large contributors. This year, we will be as well. But we managed to get along. We do a lot. We still continue to provide the services that we can. And we will still stick with the local shows. There's usually at least 2 in the Chicagoland area. We will also continue our partnerships, whether it's with the college, Kane County, Kendall County. Actually, this week, the Department of Commerce is coming to our KETA meeting, and they're going to be talking about the updates with the EDGE credits, which I know was real important to the Buddick family as well as the Butterball project when that came. We have some expansions. This one is the Earth Movers building, which is nice because they're doubling in size. They're going to add more offices and more services. I think it's going to look really nice along Baseline over there. And I know that they're happy about their growth in Montgomery. I want to say they have 4 or 5 locations. And so I think that says a lot about how they grew in our community. Commercial development, this was, I want to say this, it wasn't in last year's event, in my slides, so I want to say this was probably around September, but it seemed like that building took forever because I think they started in the winter. But the good news is there's additional interest in that corridor, and, I expect continued growth. I know that I was actually supposed to get an offer in the last week or 2. I think the snow kind of delayed some things, so we'll see what happens there. There was also some nice redevelopment on Douglas. This dental office is just unbelievable. Great people. I think both dentist offices are really happy with Montgomery. I even took one of them on a tour just to get to know the area and to reach out to some of the businesses in the community. Some people just don't know the boundaries and where Montgomery starts or ends, so it's nice to let them know, and it helps, I think. The highlights for next year, or I should say really it's this year, as we continue, I think that additional interest will continue in the TIF district. I know that I've been working with Mr. Hinchy on finding a new broker. I think the more brokers we have in the area will bring us new clients because they have relationships and those get built. So that's a good thing. I know that there's some options on some of the outlots on Ogden Hill. And again, we've been a lot more aggressive. We outreach a lot. Anytime I have any interest, Rich and his staff have always bent over backwards to help me and answer questions. So again, or be a part of, the project. And again, sometimes we might reach a customer at a different phase of the project, but we always try to keep each other in the loop, and we meet on a regular basis as well. So last, I just would like to thank everybody for listening, the media and the board and staff and the business community. I can answer any questions if you have any questions for me. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay for this whole meeting today. It'll probably be the first time in 8.5 years, but I could stay if you have any questions related to the MEDC or business development. If you want me to stay, I'll stay.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Shar or Doc? The one thing that I would add is we definitely need to include Caterpillar in that conversation. So 2,000 jobs we're about to lose in our area over the next few months, and you've been very active with Oswego and Kendall County. I think we need to definitely highlight that in our presentation, that that's going to be a significant impact not only at Caterpillar, but all the businesses in the area. It's going to have this kind of domino effect in our local economy here. And we've been very proactive. I know Shar's been very proactive in trying to find out what we can do, build that coalition of folks. I know that the listing went out by Caterpillar the other day, so if you have anything to add on that, but otherwise, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Shar.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll read the items and entertain a motion for approval. Minutes of the village board meeting of January 22nd, executive session minutes of January 22nd, the building report for January of 2018, the accounts receivable report for January 2018, accounts payable through February 2nd, cancellation of the committee of the whole on February 20th, appointment of Todd Carlson to the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners, and the appointment of Ryan Anderson to Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. Those are both reappointments. And with that, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, moving on to items for separate action. We have Ordinance 1799, amending the Orchard Crossings PUD to allow for a second motor vehicle services special use. This is Christian Brothers Automotive Services. This is second reading. For discussion purposes, we'll probably discuss both of these together. Does that make sense? Correct? So Ordinance 1800, which is granting a special use for Christian Brothers at that location. That's also a second reading, so we'll be presumably taking action on these tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to Director Young for a summary.
Thank you. Not much new to report, really, but the first item would be 1799, which would be the amendment to the Orchard Crossing planned unit development to allow for a second automotive vehicle service special use, and that would specifically be tied to Ordinance 1800 for Christian Brothers itself. There was some additional information provided by the property owner that was included in your packet about a comparison of similar type uses on Douglas Road, similar type uses beyond just automotive, but a number of different uses. Some of those uses were actually identified were in Oswego. Many of them were in Montgomery. As I pointed out in the update, there are a number of those uses that are permitted as of right in the zoning ordinance that would not come before the village board. So some of those and previous boards have not taken action to create that use because it was not a special use like this is in the zoning ordinance. So also, you had feedback, obviously, from the adjacent business owner tonight and last meeting. The only substantive thing that we have for review from the community development side is the site plan, which is included at your station tonight. We mentioned last time that literally right before your meeting 3 weeks ago, there was a minor adjustment in the plan from the original plan, which is the first sheet that you have, and the second sheet is listed as revised. The change is that some of the parking that's required was shifted from the south side of the property to the north side along US Highway 30. So relatively minor adjustment or change in the site plan, but we wanted to point that out to you, that if approved, this would be the site plan that goes along with the special use. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I know the petitioner's here. If you guys have anything you'd like to add on this or discuss, we'd welcome you down.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Wakefield. I'm the New Store Entitlement Director for Christian Brothers Automotive. Would like to start with this. We just sat through an amazing presentation about economic development for your community. Christian Brothers has heard that bell and has answered. That's why we're here. ICSC is something that we attend quite regularly. I don't know if we have met with representatives of your body or not, but because of ICSC and similar things, we are meeting with communities, depending on what you want to call a full-on project. We have 7 solid and as many as 9 in the greater Chicagoland area, and communities very much like yours. Would like to point out that we are also bringing new jobs. Our point of impact is not to take away jobs. It's not to occupy the same niche. Much has been made of the scope of work, and I'll get into that in just a second, as to what the two different businesses, how they operate. I will say this, they were complimentary of us. I would love to return the favor. On Google, they've got a 3.8 level rating, which is extraordinarily high in our industry. It's hard to maintain that. They've done a fantastic job. They have an excellent client base. They're appreciated for their price point. They're appreciated for the speed at which they do what they do. I hope that we will be appreciated for very different reasons. I would call it like this. I'm sure you have many local grocery stores that you can go and choose from. Different atmospheres, different products. They're both grocery stores. We are both grocery stores. We both have to say in our scope of work, maintenance and repair, what's online for us, what's online for them, looks very similar. Everybody sells bread. You have to. Everybody sells milk. It's not that different. The manner in which that we handle and operate our business is very different. We occupy a different niche. The vehicles that we operate, and operate's not too wrong a word, working on a vehicle, it takes a physician level education. I brought with me today Tim Richardson, who is a ASE certified master technician and is also at a higher level a Ford certified master technician, to discuss some of the technical differentiations between the things that we do. Even if, and treading lightly here, even if things were absolutely equal, if we were a Goodyear Firestone, which I would say we're talking apples to apples at that point, but even if we were a Goodyear Firestone, the location that is being sought after by Christian Brothers Automotive, which has been kindly offered for sale from us, is somewhat encumbered, not from a legal standpoint, although it is from the PUD. Obviously, we're asking for some relief from that, but it is somewhat encumbered by the automotive uses to the left and to the right. You have a gas station on one side, you have an automotive service facility on the other. To be ever so slightly blunt, nobody is going to put a flower shop or a Starbucks between those two locations. Because of what's on the left and the right, there is a limitation to what will come. Christian Brothers is very willing to come. not as a competitor, but to offer a different kind of service that here in a moment I'll turn over to Tim and let him discuss. And so, as much as we may be seen or portrayed as an outside monolithic company showing up in a suit, trying to have a negative impact on your community, I believe that nothing could be further from the truth. Our franchisees are sourced locally. We're not going to import somebody from Phoenix. The franchisees that we already have set up for some of the other communities, one of them is in West Chicago and the other one's out of St. Charles. Should be familiar sounding to you. They're all within that same area. And the franchisee for this location will be 2. Have we selected him? I'm not entirely sure, but even if we had, I wouldn't be able to tell you who he is because it would be somebody working locally, holding down a job or owning a business or something of that nature and couldn't jeopardize that livelihood. But nobody is coming from Phoenix. It will be someone local. That I can give assurances for. And so with that, Christian Brothers desperately wants to be part of this community and part of very much to be part of communities like yours. I'll leave it to Tim to talk about some of the technical aspects, and I'll leave it to the ownership group to talk about some of the legalities and the scope of what was going on in 2011, 2013, when some of the restrictions for the PUD were put into place. And with that, I'll back out and defer to Tim.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate Jonathan bringing up my certifications, ASE and Ford and all that, but probably what's more important in this setting is my role with Christian Brothers and my role in the past with other automotive repairs, and that's been in the Houston area, and it's been a role where I've been able to see a lot of stores, 4 or 5 a day. Now for Christian Brothers, I'm moving across 29 states now, I believe, and I actually get involved in all the new store openings. I also spend a lot of time in what's in RO Rider, which is our point of sale system. I can access that from my desk at stores across the country, Christian Brothers stores. And what I'm doing is I'm resolving forum tickets where the technicians contact us. We have a team at the home office, and they contact us and say, hey, we've got a problem with this powertrain control module. We're having a problem reflashing it, reprogramming, whatever it is, resetting this module, and so on. So I get to see what they're asking us for, and the vast majority of what they're asking us for is about just that, body modules. How do I reflash this? How do I create, register 2 new keys for this customer? How do what scan tool do I use to get into that vehicle and interface with it and retract the parking brakes, piston, so that I can actually do brake shoes on the rear end of this Audi, that type of stuff. That's the majority of what we see on our forum. So it is, and that's the niche difference that I think Jonathan is talking about. We cannot, and we do not seek to compete with a $19.99 oil change. That's just, our average is like $37.99 across the company, I believe, on our oil changes. So we don't seek that stuff out necessarily. We're looking at, and we succeed in competing with the dealership. So, and when I say that, I mean body shops will bring us vehicles that are still within their warranty because they've been wrecked, repaired, and if they have to go to the dealership, they're going to be 2 weeks out to get that vehicle repaired by that dealership. But we, at Christian Brothers, we have the original equipment manufactured OE level tools to work on these vehicles all the way up to 2018. That's not something that you typically see out there. So another thing that creates that difference. So we're doing that type of work, but probably on a larger scale, our competitor is the dealership, because today the vehicles that are 2015 models, 2016, some of them even, but 2014, 2013, 2012, they're out of warranty, they need work, and a lot of shops are turning that stuff away. And so the customer, or the vehicle owners, are having to take those back to the dealerships to have them worked on. In Houston, they're coming to us. They're going to the dealerships too, but in that setting, that's our main competitor right there, is the dealership. So we carry, because there's what is known as a right to repair act. So the manufacturers no longer have the right to withhold those softwares and those diagnostic tools from the aftermarket. And so we've gone after that. All of our stores are set up with those tools. We support them from the home office, and we compete with the dealership. So back to what Jonathan was saying, we're not seeking to compete with the Merlins, quite honestly. We don't do muffler work, don't do any of that kind of stuff. And in Houston, I can tell you, across the country at the Christian Brothers locations, I'm looking at the kinds of vehicles and the year models of the vehicles in the stores, and I'm looking at the work that's being done, and it's not work that I'm seeing done in most stores in the Houston area, even the ones who proclaim to compete with us. So it's about equipment, it's about capabilities, it's about training. And I've got a dozen years in automotive technical training just in the classroom, just for me, well over 10,000 hours, and I can tell you, Christian Brothers has to have a higher level of technician. So we're also not competing necessarily for jobs. We're just looking to create jobs in this environment. So not sure if anyone has any questions. I'll be glad to take them.
Awesome. Thank you. Is that microphone on?
I might have to, I'm so tall, I have to pull it up higher. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, my name's John Thompson. I'm one of the developers of both the east and west side of Route 30 and Orchard. Thanks for seeing us tonight. Just to elaborate a little bit further, I'd like to point out several points and to really focus on. We've each given you a couple items to review. The first one brought up was the last meeting is back in 2012, we had a declaration of restrictive covenant and passed it out to you, and I highlighted it to you. And just be in fair business partners, our negotiation and our deal with the adjacent retailer is that we had a restriction on automotive for a period of time. And that period of time expired on December 2013. So it's been a period over 4 years already since that's lapsed. And I gave you a copy of that for your review. So just highlights that, at one time we said we'll give you the opportunity, build your business up. It's been 4 years ago since that's passed. I think that's a real important part. There's 3 major retail corridors in Montgomery, and we're retail experts. That's what we do in other communities. And the 3 are the Route 30 and 34, which is Montgomery, Oswego. Then it was Route 30 in Douglas, and then Route 30 in Orchard, the east and west corridors that we developed, which is a total of 53 acres. We also provided another handout for you, an aerial, if you wouldn't mind passing down the aerial, and also a list of retailers at duplication. And Rich did point out that perhaps it wasn't done at special use, but the bottom line is that retailers exist in multiple markets with multiple retailers, all providing similar different products, but they differentiate themselves. And that's what the customers want. There's a difference between a Burger King and a McDonald's. There's a difference between a Napa Auto and an Advance Auto and an AutoZone and O'Reilly's. Are all great. They're all great competitors to each other, and they're all surviving. I can speak particularly on our development on the 53 acres that we did. We built 2 strip centers. One on the we'll call it the east side, which is where the Walmart is. We put in not Sport Clips. Great Clips? No, I get it too. We put in Great Clips, and there's a hair cuttery that's out there too. So we put in Great Clips, and they did fantastic. And across the street, Sport Clips came to us. Same, getting a men's haircut. I just had mine today at Sport Clips, $22. You go across the street, $22. Maybe a little bit more because you might have more hair. But pretty much the same thing, and both businesses have been around for almost 10 years. And the same thing with telephones. We have an AT&T that we just built a year ago. They're right across the street in the hard corner of 30 and Orchard. We also have a Sprint on the other side. So again, 2 businesses. There's Firestone. Firestone knew that Walmart was across the street. They both sell tires. The difference is the customer, what the customer wants. I think the customer wants choices. So if you look at the aerials, you'll see. Did you pass those down?
We have these.
You have them already. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure you have all the information that you needed. And in the strip centers that we built too over 10 years ago, there's no vacancies. We've had the same tenants for over 10 years. Maybe once in a while the tenant go up, it'll be replaced right away. So that shows that there's enough competition in the market and the customers in the market to support those stores. Walmart has automotive, and they're right in front. They're both competing with each other. And they've both been doing it for 4 years. And Walmart didn't have a problem with another automotive store open up in front of them either. They're getting a little different product, but they're still doing it's automotive. Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today as far as options and what customers want nowadays, and kind of just breaking it down pretty easy. You made a comment about bread and milk. Even more than that for those who are my age and maybe older. At one time there was Channel 5, there's Channel 2, Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 9, and 32. And that was black and white. 32? 11. Oh yeah, 11. WBM. And black and white. And then it went to color. And now you've got 1,000 choices to choose from on your TVs. Not only getting regular, you also get an HD. And everyone's surviving. Channel 2, 5, 7, 11, 9, 32 haven't gone out of business. They're still out there. So there's just a different way to differentiate themselves, and the competition just makes everyone a little bit sharper. I think that today's consumer wants options, and Christian Brothers seems to be another option for them. As a landowner and the developer for the past 10 years, we bring in sales tax. We bring sales tax for the village, and we bring it from many sources, and we bring in jobs, and we bring local employment. And Christian Brothers is making a multi-million-dollar investment on this property, and they will be here to create sales tax and create new jobs. We would like to have you consider us and vote yes tonight. And if you have any further questions, please ask. Thank you.
I just got one sheet from that handout. Is there more over there?
Yeah.
We ripped it up into pieces.
Aren't they in your packets?
Not that, not the aerial.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, it is?
They're all in our packets, I think.
They were in our,
Thank you.
My packet.
Yes. Okay. I wasn't sure what you had, so make sure you had duplication if anything. Any further questions?
Awesome.
I just have a comment,
Please.
Mr. Thompson, and I certainly can appreciate all of the development that you have worked on and brought into Montgomery. I certainly think that Christian Brothers sounds like an excellent company, and I would love to have them here. My issue is with the location, with it being right next to the Merlins. In the examples that you've pointed out in the various aerial photos, the businesses are in proximity to each other. They're not right next to each other with what we're considering tonight. I mean, and that's the key for me. And I understand what has been shared tonight in the previous meetings and even in the Plan Commission meeting, that there may be some differences, and the gentlemen from Christian Brothers have expressed the differences of what would be offered, or perhaps I would consider it what would fall under like diagnostics, more diagnostics, working with the computers on the cars, things like that. But for me, it just doesn't make sense to have the two stores next to each other. I'd be perfectly fine with them in proximity, but right next door to each other, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I can see both points, but I guess when Merlin made a decision, they also knew that Walmart was right across, right in the same parking lot, offering, not the same. I think Merlin offers a full scope of services, and they're excellent. I'm a Merlin customer. I've been Merlin, Midas. I think they're all very, very good stores, but they also made a decision and said, okay, we want to be right in Walmart's front door. And there they are. And even if you put both next to each other, Christian Brothers, and regardless of who it is, Firestone Automotive, McDonald's, Burger King, in today's consumer, they get in their car and they go. I could see them being in the parking lot of Christian Brothers and getting in their car and driving over to Merlin and driving over to Walmart, because that's what they do. They don't walk. They just kind of get in their cars and move. So does it really make a difference if it's right next door or right across the street? Because you're not going to walk across the street and say, okay, I'm going to shop this guy there and get in their car and then go somewhere. So does the difference really make that much of a 1 more minute, 2 minute, 3 minute more decision? So I guess that would be my kind of counter, and I don't know if Jonathan would add to that also. Excuse me. I'm sorry, was that it for me? Anybody else? No, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Just to key off a point that he just made, and I think it's very important. We live in a world that's driven by Google, it's driven by Yelp, that's driven by pointmetoit.com, if there is such a thing. Your location matters to a point. If you're a destination level business, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I think I'm going to have my transmission flush and fill done today. That sounds like a great idea. You have that mentality when you're going to buy a burger, but not when you're having automotive service. Somebody has to make a decision where they want to go. And I think it comes down to points made by others. It's a choice. You have to decide where you would like to go. If it's dealership level services, and again, we're being very honest here, we're not trying to compete on price point. So they're making a decision. The customer is making a decision, not in their car as they're pulling into a parking lot. That's what I would do. I'm 47. That's how I think. I still think, right? But the younger generation, they're making that decision from their phone. And once they've made that decision, they type in GPS, they drive to it, they get their service done, and they leave. If they choose to do that at Merlin's, hats off to you guys. Good job. If they choose to come to Christian Brothers Automotive, thank God. That's why we're here. But again, you still have to have a visible location in a place where people are accustomed to getting automotive service. That's why this piece of land is so important to us. Can certainly understand the points you're making, and if you vote no, that's all right. God bless you. It's okay. We're still friends. But we feel like this is an area that's already automotive-centric. We need to be in a like place doing like business in a niche that currently does not exist.
Thank you.
I have a quick comment.
Yes, sir.
The gentleman, older gentleman of you guys, he's probably younger than I am, but he mentioned that he did not know the franchisee. You just mentioned that too.
Correct.
And yet in the paper last week, you guys were over in Naperville, special use going to Naperville. You had the same, a little more flowery, that Naperville's a little better town than ours and that type of thing, but you have to do that, I guess. But that was the comments, and at that time you said, oh, we have a franchisee from St. Charles.
For Naperville.
Yeah, and I went, well, if they're after us, what happened to our guy? Do you really have an interest, or are you?
We do. We have quite a bit of interest, and again, that's all driven by ICSC level conversation, municipalities coming to us, and so we have an active marketing team, a franchising team. Josh Wall, Missy, the other Josh, and one other. We have a team of people who are fielding people who are applying to be a franchisee. We are not a McDonald's. You don't show up with X number of dollars and are handed a franchise. The vetting process is extremely strict for us. Only 6%, and Josh Wall will come after me if I get this one wrong. He's our VP of franchising. Only 6% of the people who apply for a Christian Brothers franchise are approved. It's that stringent. They've got to be morally upright. They have to have the business acumen. They have to know the local. That's important. They have to know the local territory, because if they don't, we are at, now I'm getting into the weeds, we're at a tactical disadvantage. And why in the world would you do that? Why would you fly that person in from Phoenix and drop them off when the only thing that they've got to wear in the wintertime is shorts? It's just not how you do. So you bring in people who know the lay of the land, know the weather, know how vehicles break down, because they've been here, they've done that, and they understand. So to answer your question, no, I don't have anybody lined up, ready to bat for this location, but the permitting process is going to take us another 3 months if everyone or enough folks vote yes tonight, and then it'll take us 6 months to build it. That's 9 months to lock it down.
Thank you.
Sir.
Comments, questions?
I have a question. I'm sorry, it's more directed towards staff and attorney. I've been wrestling with this for a while. Many of you, Rich and Matt, you've all heard conversations. And I requested the original PUD, ordinance number 1321, and very specifically in section 1, item 2B, special additional conditions. Only one automotive-related use shall be permitted within the limits of this PUD. It's pretty clear to me that when this was written in 2007, it was one. There was only going to ever be one. And now we're looking to change that. And I'm having a problem with that. Because if I was the guy who was there when this was done, and if this is the case, then why does the new document say only 2 automotive. Remove it, because it obviously doesn't mean anything. If it says 1, and we're going to change it to 2, then why don't we take 2 away?
Is there a question in there somewhere?
Yeah.
All right, what's the question?
If this says 1.
Right.
And we're going to change it to 2, then why do we bother leaving 2? Why don't we just take it out and we can put as many in as we want?
So also, before you jump in, I just want to say one thing. We do this every time we issue a liquor license. We go from, otherwise, the one liquor license we had when we started would have made the same claim for every other one. But I do, and to, I guess, more clarify the question, there was a restrictive covenant, which is very different from, which is not you.
That's not what.
Right, and then there's a
talking about.
and then there's a PUD. And
Right.
Can you explain, maybe explain if there is 1 or 2? That's the only issue that's the main issue that people are wrestling with. The fact that there was, I guess the inclination is that there was some assurances that the PUD was as such so that nobody would ever be able to come in this PUD.
Okay, there's a lot wrapped up there.
Yeah.
Let's start with something basic, which I think neither of you asked, but the world may be confused about,
You know better than I do.
which is that we have a restrictive covenant, or rather, the landowners have a restrictive covenant. We don't. This has nothing to do with the village, which had some time limitations in it that have now expired. That's fine. They didn't have to have it. They did. That's between them. So that's not what you're talking about. What you're talking about is our ordinance, the village's ordinance, which is the PUD. And you're right, at the time that it was passed with a variety of things, I think, special conditions. That's why it's a PUD, one of which was the limitation on auto uses to 1. The one thing that you said that I would disagree with is you said that there would never be a second one. And we don't represent that in our ordinances ever, because if you think about that, whenever we would pass an ordinance, zoning anything, if the expectation is that people then buy in reliance on that, you could never update your zoning map, period, the end. You'd never have the ability to do that. The understanding in zoning law, and basically everybody's understanding, is it's always possible for the village to change the zoning. In fact, I'll go so far as to say it is possible for the village to change the zoning on your property, and I don't mean you in particular, but we call it a down zoning, an involuntary down zoning, where we can take and remove rights that you have to certain zoning entitlements right out from under you. Doesn't happen very often. I don't think this village has ever done it, but that possibility exists. So legally, this board is empowered with the ability to change and update its zoning laws periodically. So that's why we can do it, even though the ordinance currently reads one way, you have the ability to change it. Now to your second question of, well, if we're just going to change it, why don't we change it to unlimited? That is absolutely your choice. That's a policy decision that you can make. However, I think there's a policy decision at play here as well that says we don't want to fully open the door to this. We want to take it on more of a case by case. Again, not my decision to make. That's a policy decision. That's yours to make. But legally, you are entitled to change it. And legally, you are entitled to limit it to 2, and you could come back and change it again. I say sometimes when people talk to me about this concept, and forgive me if it's just a little offensive, but I do say that if you want to control the destiny of your neighbor's property, I suggest you buy it, because that's the only real guarantee. I hope that answers your questions.
And the one, and again, then I would fall back to the language, because it does almost imply it is limited within the limits of PU. There is only going to be 1 for now.
Until you choose to change it.
Is that one Walmart?
No.
What is it?
One is Merlin.
I don't think Walmart is within the.
No, Walmart's a separate PUD.
Walmart is not part of this.
It was the outlots along Route 30.
So the one thing that I want to add in this is that I've worked on developments in my day job where if somebody really wants, like I know Walmart does this and Jewel does this, if you really want to ensure that nobody else does your business anywhere near you in this property, you get a restrictive covenant, and you pay for that, right? You pay for limiting the rights of all these other properties. Because I think in Sugar Grove even, the jewel there needed to approve the outlot developments of like Dunkin' Donuts or whatever it was. So this is how you go about doing that. If there was some assurances given to Merlin's when they moved in that said, oh, based on the zoning, nothing else will ever be here, I think that would have been wrong, and your zoning attorney would have definitely known that. Yeah. So I think just based on law and based on zoning, this is a zoning use for that property. If McDonald's wanted to move in next to that Burger King, would we tell them no? If CVS wants to go across from a Walgreens, would we tell them no? Are we really about limiting competition in Montgomery just because it's next door? And if it was a huge corporation coming in to undercut the family-owned business here in Montgomery, that'd be another topic. But it's not. It's like literally somebody else coming in to do a similar service that's more expensive. I mean, it's the opposite of that. So to me, I think that kind of opens us up to some issues if we were to vote it down based on zoning. That I don't think it's a position we want to put ourselves in. Because I don't think the actual physical use of this hurts the property next door, just like it's not going to hurt the gas station. I think it's going to be a benefit to this whole area. And the other thing I was going to say, when Earth Movers in that presentation came through and asked for a subdivision or whatever it was, I know we had to approve something. The other banks in the area didn't come by and complain about the competition in the area that would hurt their business. I would hope and I believe and I know that businesses don't just invest $1 million, $2 million in a new facility in our town on a whim that they're going to do good. There's market research that goes into this to know that they're going to be competitive in this area. And I think competition in Montgomery, a brand new building with new employees, is way better than sitting in a vacant lot, because they're not asking us to go somewhere in Montgomery. They have a petition in front of us that they want to build in our village right here. That's why I think we approve this. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with that, just because of the situation, but just, I don't want to get into a back and forth because you're not a petitioner, but I do want to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Listen to some of this, and, they don't have a franchisee currently who's local, no matter what neighborhood they come from. We have a franchisee here today whose life is going to be impacted, who's born and raised in Montgomery, lived his whole life in Montgomery, right, Steve? And back in 2007, when this was written, okay, and I understand you have the legal right or you can do this or that, but to me, does this make the best sense? Is this common sense? Is this good business? I don't think Merlin does not want Christian Brothers to be in Montgomery. Don't get me wrong. We just don't want them back to back. That's the only problem we have. They want to move the other side of the street, like he was saying, the hair cuttery or Sport Clips or whatever, or the phone companies that they're talking about moving across the street. Fine. We don't have a problem with that. The problem is back to back. It's going to confuse people. We're all about the free economy. Now I want to address the technical aspect of it. We do the same work. We have a training facility in Geneva, Illinois, where we have over 200 training classes that are available for technicians and franchisees free of charge. We don't charge them. And most of our franchisees are here in the area. So they can send themselves or their employees to there. So we're constantly up to date with the training. We are constantly up to date with the equipment inside the shops. I think, Steve, you have 2 alignment racks and stuff. So we are up to date. We do the same work. The only thing we do not do is body shop. We don't do any kind of interior type upholstery work. Other than that, we do the same thing. They want to differentiate themselves from us. They are not. They do the same type of work. Whether they charge more than us or not, that's up to them. We're not telling them to charge less or charge more. We just don't want them right behind us. That's the only issue we have. So with that said, I want to talk about the developer, Mr. Thompson, I believe, talking about Advance and AutoZone. We have a very good relationship with Advance Auto Parts, and they are shuttering some facilities. They bought CarQuest. They're condensing them just because they know they have too many stores and they can't, these areas can't support all of them. When they're next to an auto zone, in advance, they're closing some of those things down. They're shuttering them. So I just fear that you have a man who put his whole life savings into this, is going to be impacted this. And again, don't get me wrong. In Montgomery, they had tax dollars, they had jobs. I agree with you. I agree with you. But we've already done that. We've already made the investment. We continue to do so. We've been here for over 30 years in Montgomery. And I guess that's all I really have to say.
So and I appreciate that. And I'm going to ask you a very specific question. When you guys negotiated the sale of this property or the purchase of this land, this restrictive covenant was put on this, I presume, on this entire PUD property owned by McVickers that did not allow another use similar to yours until the end of 2013. Why didn't you have that be forever then? Like, why was that okay there? You approved that. Were you relying on the PUD to never change?
Well, I cannot answer that. I wasn't involved in the transaction on this, but we don't have the deep pockets to say buy this property or do whatever you need to do or file for this. No, we didn't think about it. I'll say that today. I took over the operation in 2015. So prior to that, I've been with the company for 15 years though, but I was not part of this real estate transaction. I cannot answer that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? I'll give you guys another opportunity if you had something else to add on that. Okay. Curious to see what the other two board members feel on this. I know you've spoken out. Stan, Steve?
I believe that the fact, the finding, as we go through these, the findings of fact, I believe on number 2, the special use will be injurious to the property in the immediate vicinity, so I'm going to vote no on it.
And based on what?
Based upon number 2, which I just read, the special use.
Right, but
will
how
be
is it going to
injurious
injure the
use
property next to it?
of the property in the immediate vicinity.
True, but from a zoning standpoint, how is this parcel going to impact that one?
I have a PUD agreement or a village ordinance right here that says there's only going to be one.
So based on the use of the property, you're going to vote no? I think that opens us up to some problems. Stan?
Well, my other question, I think, was answered. The Walmart property is not a factor in this because it's a separate parcel, even though they're adjacent. I share Mr. Youngerman's belief, too, that this will be deleterious to the adjacent property's value. And I think there's a difference between what we can do and what we should do in this regard with the PUD as well.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Trustee Youngerman, you're referencing the standards that the Plan Commission made their recommendations on, correct?
Correct. I'm willing to accept the fact that the Plan Commission made a recommendation. I'm not willing to accept their recommendation.
I share that, too. I had no problem with their process in arriving at their recommendation, which I think is what our vote is intended to reflect. But I don't have to agree with their conclusion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. You're free to vote however you like. So, question: if the board votes this down, based on the fact that this competing use, will impact the profitability of the Merlins, does that open us up to some problems?
I think that was phrased.
Well, nobody's willing to explain the actual.
It's not profitability;
impact? It's
the value. It will or will not detract from the value.
So how is it going to? I guess, but on your opinion, how is it going to impact the value of the property?
He could still answer the question, but I just like it phrased better that way.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Has
And
nothing
I'm
to do
looking
with
for
profit.
more
I have a
verbiage.
village ordinance right here,
No, it's not
wherever it is.
While we're looking through that, I'll make one final comment
That says-
that I want to compete on here, and that is the letter from Merlin's lawyer made the comment that the client did not receive written notification. And actually, I think the gentleman from St. Charles probably got that notification because it wasn't sent to the right person or whatever. So it really, in that case, I don't see her point on that. And the second one, and this I had in sporting goods was it was Starter Sportswear. like you said, Matt, instead of making this December 2/13, you could have put it December 2/25, if you really were worried about competition. That's the way I look at it. And they didn't. They only put it at 13. They knew what they were signing, and to me, that's part of being in business. I mean, you got to have a smarter lawyer or something. But
Let me put it a different way. I have Village Ordinance number 1321 in my hand that states only one automotive-related use shall be permitted within the limits of the PUD. That's all I need to vote no.
if he signed a letter on the restriction, though, later on, what are you saying? That back then but he wasn't smart enough on signing this, or what? If he didn't have this, I could see your point, but.
You
he had
voted
a
for that too.
restricted
It says you voted yes on it.
Well, sure, back then, but then this guy puts in later on a restricted covenant, and he signs for it. So you can't say, well, wait a minute, now, I signed the first one, well, he signed the second one.
See, that's the one thing that I would echo too, is that if you, I'm all about protecting the company or the resident that either didn't know or didn't have the resources to look into something. But the fact that this is a transaction between two established businesses, being the developer and Merlin's, you know what you're signing, and you signed a covenant that restricted the use of that property for only 4 years. If you were that concerned about it, you could certainly put that restriction. I think the developer would have absolutely entertained that, but like everything, comes with a price. I know you said you can't afford putting a restriction on the property, but I know that companies do it, and that it can be done. So the question that I was asking our attorney is that Trustee Sperling had said that she feels that she would vote no to this because of the proximity of the competing use. And on this side of the table here, it seems to be based on the fact that it would impact the value of the property. So if we turn it down based on this use, this exact same use, more or less, impacting negativity the property next to it, does that open us up to some problems?
Well, when you say problems, I'm going to translate that into could somebody sue the village or challenge your decision? That is always the case. In other words, here, whatever decision you make, there are two parties to it, if you will, who arguably have standing to challenge it. One is Merlin's, the other is Christian Brothers. So in either case, that possibility exists. If you vote it down and it meets the criterion for the amended special use, I would say that they have a stronger case. What I have heard from Trustee Youngerman and perhaps from Trustee Bond is that they believe it doesn't meet the second criterion. I can't tell anybody how to vote. I can't tell anybody how to interpret those standards. All I can do is point you to the standards, and you make the decision whether or not you feel they are met. Whether or not that ultimately a court, if Christian Brothers or Merlin, depending on how this goes, if somebody wants to challenge us, they have every right to do that. In court, a court may or may not agree with you, and that's what happens.
I just want to chime in because I mean, again, I've been back and forth many times on this. But in reference to item 2, when I reread this talks about to substantially diminish or impair the property's value. It doesn't say anything about the business.
Correct.
It talks about the property.
Correct.
If you're going to open a rubber recycling plant and it's going to dump stuff into the soil, it's going to contaminate and leach into your property, it's going to diminish your property. You're going to put the sports dome in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and the light wash is going to deteriorate the values of the property. I'm not sure that having a competing business adjacent to each other, although I don't love it, I'm not sure that it meets that. I'm pretty sure it meets all of the criteria Planning Commission went through, and it's not going to devalue the property. It may hurt the business, but it's got nothing to do with the value of the property.
The standard that you're talking about, standard number 2, is typically interpreted as a diminution of value of the property, not of the business. However, that is what I just said, the standard interpretation of it. It's not my job to tell trustees how to interpret whether this meets or doesn't meet the qualifications. That's up to your individual consciences to decide.
I don't see how it affects. like I mentioned the first time around, Merlin's mufflers, that's what I think of, Merlin mufflers. These guys don't handle mufflers. They're not open Saturday, Sundays. They probably are. So in that case, they have an advantage on one side. Maybe they got more tools in Subarus or something that they can fix a Subaru faster than these guys can. I don't know. But it's still competition's competition. And as long as you sign this restriction and didn't put it longer, and believe me, in Starter, we had a lot of those that said, I didn't know going that fast. I should have said, you know, the guy can't open up right next to me in downtown. And it was right like on Madison where these guys all wanted the stuff. And they made the same mistake. And it's just that you either had a better lawyer or you had better thinking down the road.
And yeah, I think so. Yeah, you can come down. So the one thing that I have is we pride ourselves on being a pro-business, pro-growth, responsible growth village, right? That we're inviting people in. We just have our EDC update into our village, and so us saying to a development, we want you in our village. Just can you move? Like how I guess what lot would you be comfortable them on? You want them to move one lot over? You want them to move 5 lots over? At what point to you does it make it okay?
But to defend that point, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate, I love the sports dome concept that's proposed over there on Montgomery Road. Love it. Not there.
Totally.
Everybody was in complete agreement. Planning Commission loves it, just not there.
Yeah, because
so because of where
because of
it's
the
at.
impact to the value of the property.
Correct. So that's the same point that the folks here
Go
are
ahead, sir.
trying to say.
My name is Jerry Callahan. I represent McVickers Development. I've represented them on zoning matters for years in various communities. I've represented developers, owners, local governments for over 35 years on zoning matters. And I have to tell you that this is the first time I have ever encountered a decision that comes down to competition. That's the only thing you're talking about. All of the other standards and criteria have been met according to the Plan Commission. We're talking about competition. We're not talking about land value, which is the appropriate standard. There's been no testimony here that says that this is going to diminish the value of this property. If that were the case, they're saying it's the same use. Then their use diminishes the value of this property. It doesn't make any sense. So this is competition. And you're not supposed to use zoning to favor one business over another. I believe there's case law on it. I don't have it with me, but I mean, if you could make a decision on competition alone, it would be a serious problem. I mean, somebody who has a buddy who's got this kind of business. I'm not saying anything, you know, any kind of money changing hands. Just, well, he's my friend. I want to protect his business. It doesn't make any sense. In a municipality, this is a fine user. It's a fine company. Everybody said it. It's not the right way to make a decision to base it on competition alone. The way to protect competition, and it's been raised here, is through private covenants. That's why people have private covenants. I've been involved in I don't know how many shopping centers where the McDonald's says, you're going to sign a covenant that says you can't have another fast food restaurant here. And they pay for that. That's part of what the bargain is. And that happened here, but it had a limited amount of time. So, you know, under these circumstances, I don't think this board should make a decision based solely on competition and issues. So we ask that you approve this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
I have a question for our attorney. There have been other conversations in this room where businesses sought a special use, and we have determined, no, we don't think that property is appropriate for that use. That's why they have to come and ask for a special use.
That is
How is
correct.
that different from this?
Well, I would tell you exactly the same thing I'm telling you here, which is the Plan Commission and then you ultimately have to review those sets of standards and determine whether or not they meet them. And my typical advice is please review them. If you find that they meet all the requirements, you should grant the special use, whether you like it or not. And if you feel that they don't meet the special use standards, you should deny it, whether you like it or not. It's almost a quasi-judicial thing rather than just a purely legislative act on your part. You have the standards here. You've heard, I think, good arguments from Mr. Callahan about, what meets those standards and what doesn't. You've heard the arguments of the other side. Again, I'm doing my level best to not tell you how to vote because it's not my job.
Am I correct in verbalizing this as a special use discussion?
It most certainly is. There's a text amendment, but there's a special use that's tied right into it. And in fact, the text amendment is of a PUD, which is a subclass of a special use.
Okay. Anything else to add? Comments, questions?
No? Would you like a motion?
Yep.
Motion, ordinance 1799 for special use Orchard Crossing. Motion to approve. Thank you.
Second?
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
No.
Trustee Spurling?
No.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngman?
No.
That fails. With that, we will not take action, obviously, on B.
Item B is
And I appreciate all of you coming this evening. All right, we'll move on to Resolution 2018-002, approving financial policies. Director Van Voren.
This is in the same format as it was previously when it was discussed on November 27th. Nothing to add at this point, but I could answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
No. Motion to approve?
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. Item D, Resolution 2018-003, improving the investment policy. Go ahead.
This is also in the same format as it was previously presented, and I could answer any questions at this time.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
And finally, Resolution 2018-004, approving our debt management policy. No comments?
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll. Sorry.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Justin, did you want us to reconsider that one? No? Okay.
All right, Ordinance 1801, adopting the 2014 National Electric Code, first reading. Director Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, we have before you for first reading the first of 4 different codes that we'll be bringing to you in the next few meetings. We have 2 tonight. We have the National Electric Code update and then also the Property Management Code update. These, along with the residential building codes and the commercial building codes, make up what we consider the building code for the village. So there's 4 elements. We're asking you to take a look at the first 2 tonight, and in subsequent meetings, we'll bring back the other 2. So periodically, the village goes through an update process where our staff reviews what the national standards are for these individual codes. They come out with updates approximately every 3 years. We are currently under a set of codes or national codes as a base with some local amendments for all 4 of these, and this is the first one we'd like to bring forward tonight. So we have the 2014 edition of the National Electric Code. Question was asked about our local amendments and what they meant in terms of substance within the document itself. We have outlined a number of minor changes to the National Code that are a part of your packet. Sorry, get my notes here. So with the National Electric Code, we continued the use of metal conduit as a part of the requirements within the code itself. Some communities have gone to Romex or other types of materials. We feel that it's necessary to continue to use metal conduit for any wiring that takes place in a home or commercial establishment. The second amendment would be a clarification of the GFCI circuits, and just that we include those in certain locations within the code to be included in certain locations within buildings. So that's an expansion of that requirement from the National Code as a local amendment. We're also clarifying the location of arc fault breakers and how they're placed within a structure for fire prevention. Clarification supporting, again, metal conduit. It's in a separate location within the code itself, and how it relates to commercial applications, not just residential homes, but also commercial applications. And then there's additional language about emergency lighting that is required above and beyond what the national code would be. These are the recommendations from our staff as we look at the set of national standards as a base. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that if you have any.
I do have one. So with these changes and this change to the new code, it affects all new construction, and it would affect remodeling that requires a permit.
That's correct.
Obviously, but it doesn't impact, based on our conversation.
If you had a remodeling project and you're not changing the square footage of a structure and you're doing your kitchen, then the kitchen would have to be up to code, the National Electric Code with these local amendments, but it does not mean you have to rewire or rework your entire structure, your entire home. The other change that I failed to mention was that the National Electric Code requires that any remodeling, let me back up. It's required in the state code that any remodeling would require smoke detectors or CO detectors that are included in your remodeling project if you have not previously put them in your home. So say you have a 60-year home that's never been remodeled, but you want to redo your kitchen, then we would require you, based on state statute, to include smoke detectors and CO2 detector.
Throughout the structure?
Yes.
Okay.
And is this pretty consistent with what others have done in?
This is consistent with our neighboring communities. Others are looking at the same thing. We know that Yorkville is going through this process now, as well as Oswego. So I would say that our local amendments might not be exactly what they're going to do, but yes, they're very similar.
Okay.
And we've pulled from other communities that have already adopted their amended codes and looked at what they've done, and these are consistent with that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that one? That's first reading, so we're not going to vote on that tonight. Ordinance 1802, adopting the 2015 International Property Maintenance Code, first reading.
Thank you. This is, as you just mentioned, the 2015 Property Maintenance Code Amendment. There are three major points that we have in terms of local amendments to the base national code. We're clarifying and looking at adjustments in the stair railing dimensions and provisions in terms of how those are incorporated into the code, primarily from a safety standpoint. We've looked at that and what some of our adjacent communities have recommended in their approval, so we felt that we needed to beef up those standards from the national code in our local amendments. Under the general standards, we're revising, we're looking at the base code for the nation takes a look at heat supply and window screening, and it's a climate type thing by region within the U.S. So within the U.S., we're looking at, within the state of Illinois, we're looking at what makes sense from a climate standpoint for the requirements of screens and the heat supply, meaning temperature has to be at a certain level from April 1st to September 30th. That would be for HVAC. For the others, it would be for the heat through the winter time, the winter months. I reversed those dates. It's September 1st to April 1st for heat. Apologize. And then under the general standards, we're looking at, this has to do specifically with property maintenance of the site situation for matching that our grass height limitation for maximum before you're required to cut would be 8 inches. We have to just plug in a standard there from the National Code because they leave you the option of what that adjustment would be. And so we're plugging that in to match up with our existing code. Those are the 3 major local amendments, I would say. They're not even major, but adjustments to our local standards, local amendments.
Okay, awesome. All right, we're not taking action on that tonight, so if you have any comments before a future meeting, go ahead and make those. All right, I envision these next ones taking a little bit at least, correct? The next 5? Can we take 5 minutes?
Thank you.
Be right back.
I guess.
I saw Doug wiggling.